Yeah. Okay. So guys, see, this is the framework which we are currently working on, and the people who are just joined, like Akshay and all, Sujit and Ashlesha, you guys have started working on it. I don't know to which level you are currently on, but I have recorded all the videos, and which would help you guys to reach to this level where we are currently in, right? So I'm going to talk about few concepts in the framework development phase. Right now, we are in a framework development phase, so we haven't started automating more test cases into it. So fundamentally, when a project starts, any automation project starts, you first focus few weeks, I guess around 3 to 4 weeks at least, if you are making something from scratch. So 3 to 4 weeks are actually devoted in framework development. And framework development, what you do is you create a lot of reusable methods. You design a complete process of how the workflow, how the automation framework will, the workflow inside automation framework will go. How you will going to keep your page, you're going to keep your page objects, how the reports will be generated, how the logs will be generated, and how you will manage the object creation, right? So we are going to talk about object creation today actually. So we have already completed a lot of other things. So we have completed our log4j, how we log. We have also done some reporting mechanisms. We have implemented reporting mechanisms in the form of this extend report, extend cucumber adapter. Then we have also kind of established how we are going to keep our page objects. So using this page object and not page factory, we are using page object, plain simple page object implementation on how we will keep the objects in our framework. And how we are going to maintain the feature files is also what we have. So these all are framework activities, framework development activities, right? Then we also created few utility methods. Some interact class is what we created, right? And we also had a config.property where we are taking the static variable information. Let me admit this person 1 minute. Yeah. All right. So all these activities are framework development activities. And if you notice, I have only one test cases created here for this UI. And I'm not going to scale it up unless I am done. I would say to some degree that my framework activities, the primary main fundamental framework activities are done and completed, right? So we are kind of at the very end of our framework development activity. And once we do that, then we are going to start scaling this, more test cases into it. Why we are not scaling right now? Because if we don't develop our framework to the extent where it becomes reusable or becomes easy, or things becomes easy on that framework to work upon, unless we do that, we will have lot of problems if we don't do that. So point is, let's say we have one test case and we are still in the framework development phase, and framework development phase is not completed, and we started automating more test cases on it. So let's say you have 30 test cases developed on it, and then you think that, oh, I need one more framework development stuff to be done. Then it becomes difficult. Why? Because the cost of fixing that issue will be higher if you have more test cases now. That's the reason I am not developing any more test cases, and that is what also you should do if you're somehow get to a project where everything has to be done from scratch. So when that happens, you should not start, because why I'm telling you this, because this kind of pressure always comes. So when you are into a project, the manager, the client, they doesn't know all these things. They will say start automating, and they will start asking you the count, how much automation you have done, how much automation you have done. So you have to make this very clear to them that first 3 weeks or 4 weeks you're going to work only on framework development activity, and then you're going to start automating the test cases, right? So this is important in real projects. This understanding is important. If you have this understanding, then only you're going to convince the stakeholders that hold on unless I complete the framework development activity, right? And this is very, very common problem, guys. I've seen this many times. People struggle with it. I also get calls that they're asking for counts, and my framework is not ready. So this kind of situation only happens when you are not yourself convinced that you need to spend enough time in framework development. Okay. So this is a very, very important point I wanted to talk about. Now, next is what is left in this framework. So we already discussed whatever we have, whatever is the things which we have already implemented. Now, one last thing I would say is how we will create the objects. right? So that is the area I would, like to focus on today. One more participant, let me admit. Yeah, okay. So let us take an example of, in the step def, I'll go inside this. Let us take this example, which is I have a browser open and URL is navigated, right? So this WebDriver is the most important object of any web automation, right? How you are going to define or invoke or create the WebDriver object is of huge importance. Now the simple way which you can do is simple this, right? That is what we had done earlier. This is what we had earlier. So WebDriver equal to new Chrome driver.manage. All this information which you want to work with driver, you're going to, write it inside the step def. And okay, and all this information is present here, right? So in my opinion, if you want to start with the project, this is enough, right? Nothing more is required other than this. But this cannot be considered as a good designing or good standard Java standard or good designing standard from a framework perspective. Why? Because in Java we have many design principles, right? And design, when I say design principles, you must have heard about OOPS concepts, right? So in OOPS concept we have abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism. So all these concepts are important for you to be able to achieve a real object oriented framework, right? So this is not a problem, you can clearly do it, but we want to make it better, right? How we will make it better? By implementing the proper design principles or proper industry design principles the industry uses. We are going to modify this and we are going to make it a more standard, right? So the first way of doing it is, maybe I can start typing. However, I have written all the code. All I'm going to do is to explain what I've written, so that I could save time in explaining, right? So if you are doing something like this, you can very well do it. It will still work, and that is how we were doing earlier as well, right? This is okay, but we don't want to have this object creation standalone. We want to encapsulate it. Why? Again, industry standard, the object creation mechanism is something which should be abstracted and encapsulated. This should not be kept this loose, right? This is the main and kind of main motivation behind doing all these things. I want, or actually industry or design pattern dictates that your object creation should be encapsulated. They should be encapsulated as well as abstracted, right? So whole and sole idea is, if you wish to create an object, don't create an object in a loose form. Now this is what I say as a loose form. Okay, so to do that, we have various design principles, designing patterns of how you're going to create objects, right? So maybe let me show you something perhaps here. Design patterns, let me Google this first. Good design patterns, right? So software design pattern, or rather, let me write Gang of Four. Anyone heard of Gang of Four design pattern? Anyone? Yeah. So
No.
this was a book, came I think in 1994, in which there were few design patterns listed, and those design patterns are further categorized into creational, structure, and behavior. And you, in your day-to-day activities, since you all are learning automation, in your day-to-day activities, you must have heard about these design patterns in one way or another. So there are few: creational, structure, and behavior. And what we're going to do today is more or less creational. Okay, creational design patterns are, these are creational design patterns, by the way. So creational design patterns are more towards how you're going to create an object. And the main and sole purpose of this is the same thing which I explained, that you want to encapsulate and abstract the creation of the object. You don't want to keep it loose somewhere, right? You want to implement polymorphism concept in that. You want to abstract the whole creation mechanism, so that the user of it, the person who want to create an object, don't have to use new keyword, right? That's the whole and sole idea behind it. Now I think you must have heard about factory, abstract factory, builder, right? So builder, where do you see builder? In Selenium, when Selenium library was written, inside that library there is a class called as actions class. I think old people who have already worked on Sorry guys, 1 minute. Right, so old people who have worked on the Selenium piece, they must be aware that actions class is based on builder pattern basically. Similarly, factory. In Selenium, we have a class or another subset called as page factory, right? Now that page factory implementation is actually built on factory design pattern. Okay, they all deal with the how you're going to create the object and how you're going to create the object with the specific parameters, right? The more complex the object creation is, the more need of a proper design pattern to be implemented arises. Okay, so factory, builder, then we have prototype, and we have singleton. So maybe today, and we don't want to learn these concepts, right? We can very well create a framework without these, by the way. It's not mandatory to use all these, but if you use them, it becomes easy for you later if you want to modify or enhance your software or framework, because framework in itself is a software only, right? So these patterns, actually the use of these patterns help you in scaling the framework. So if you, let's say, not using them, then most probably later on when you scale your framework, maybe you might find a lot of issues which could be very well be solved if you would have used these design patterns. So it's very important that in the beginning of the software creation we start using these patterns. Secondly, why we're using this? Because we want to learn them. If you don't use it in our framework, as I said, we can create a framework in a very, very basic format, no problem, we can just learn that. But it's not a good thing, because you will never learn these concepts if you just focus on doing things easy. And these concepts are in itself are not quite difficult to understand. It's quite easy if you practice it. If you understand its use case, maybe it becomes easy for you to understand it. That is the reason why I'm telling you this in today's session. Okay, now I'm going to talk more about factory and singleton, right? Builder also I can talk about, but right now I don't see a proper use case of implementing builder anywhere in our framework. But yes, we will try to do it in coming days. But factory and singleton is what I'm going to tell you today. And I think you also would have seen these behavior design patterns, iterator, right? You must have heard of all these things, chain of responsibility, adapter. So all these are design patterns, and you will encounter these things. So if you are using Log4j library, if you are using extend report library, these libraries actually have used these design patterns while development of their softwares, which we are kind of using. So you will encounter these, but it's just, since you're not aware of them, you might not be able to figure out what kind of design pattern it is. But that's the reason we are learning it, because we can understand, if let's say even if you don't want to implement it, at least if there is an implementation of it, you can actually understand what that implementation is. And that is why I recommend that you go through these design patterns, at least few of them: factory, singleton, builder, iterator, IOC, inversion of controls. All these design patterns are important for developing a good framework. All right, so enough talk. Now let me go back here. Right, so these design patterns is what we're going to implement. So first of all, this is loose code. We don't want it. To eliminate this, what we can do is we can have a class and a method, which I think I've implemented somewhere in the util section, in the UI, in the manager section. Let me close this. Yeah, this one. So I don't want this, right? I don't want a user to just write this loose code. So what I can do, very simple. I can create a class, I can create a method, get-driver. It's a static method, and I will pass the Chrome here. And it based on what I'm passing. If I'm passing Chrome, it will return me the new Chrome driver. If I'm passing Firefox, it will return me the Firefox, which I have not written yet. But if the more browser you want, the more cases you're going to add here. And this is very simple. So what you will do is, instead of writing this, you will remove all this. I'll kind of, let me comment it out. And what I will do, I will simply call WebDriver manager simple dot get driver. Here I will pass Chrome. Come on, Chrome. And here is my driver. Right? So see, I have somehow encapsulated the new keyword and the creation of the driver. If I want to Firefox, I will just simply write Firefox. Right? Now this could work for me, but this is not this doesn't qualify to be called as a design pattern. It's something for which I created a encapsulated method, a wrapper in some sense, and then I'm just calling the wrapper. But I sure have removed this new thing, new keyword use, right? So I have passed on, I have shifted the responsibility of creating the driver from the script, from my primary script, to somewhere else, right? This could as I said, this could very well work, but this is not a design pattern. We want to implement a more industry standard design pattern, right? Now, second way, if I want to talk about, if let's say I don't want to use it, so let me just remove it from here. So if I don't want to do it, the second best thing I could do is singleton, right? Now let me tell you something about singleton, right? So this is a singleton class. This singleton class, I think I explained in the previous batch. I wrote this, I think, in 15 June 2019. So long back I wrote this, and I explained this early in my earlier batches. And whoever has attended those batches should be aware of it. Guys, can you all go on mute? Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. So this WebDriver manager singleton, or in general singleton, a singleton class is a class which doesn't allow direct instantiation of it, right? So if I want to instantiate this class, I will not be able to. Why? Because the constructor of this class is made as private. That is, if you want to say WebDriver manager singleton equal to new WebDriver manager singleton, it will give you a compile time error. Okay. First thing is that you cannot instantiate it. Second thing is, no matter where you're going to call its method or get instance method, it will always give you the same instance, right? So whole and sole purpose of having a singleton is it only allows single instance of the class. Wherever you wish to call it, irrespective of where you're calling it, it will always give you the single instance. And the way to implement is, first of all, you need to control the object creation. So first I have made it as private. So I cannot, or no one can, automatically instantiate it. Then I have created three public methods. So rather actually two are important, public and getDriver and gets instance of WebDriver manager. But the point is I do need to create its object. Otherwise I will not be able to make use of this class, right? So in order to create the object, I am going to make use of its method called as get instance of WebDriver manager. And this is a static method. And what this will return? Now this will return me the instance of this class. So singleton, for getting the object of a singleton class, you can do it, but not in a standard way. You cannot initialize it using new keyword. If you want to get instance of it, you have to call its method get instance of WebDriver manager. And what it will do is it will first check whether the instance of this singleton class, which is this, is it existing? If it is existing, then it will return you the same instance. And that is how we achieve that the only single instance at one point of time will be available across all your software, right? So it will first check whether the single instance is available. If not, if you're doing it, let's say in the flow of execution, it's the first time you're calling this, so it will be returned as null. And if it is null, then it will initialize it. So now I am initializing it and putting it here, and then that is returned, right? So this is how in a singleton class we make sure that only a single instance is available across all your frameworks. So no matter where you are going to call it, it will always return you the same instance. Okay, and so this singleton pattern is what I am trying to use here for WebDriver. Now singleton, using singleton is it's a concept basically, right? And I need to make sure that why I need it. So in this case, I'm using it for WebDriver because what I want is I want to make WebDriver available in all of my classes, all of my methods, everywhere, right? I want that to be available everywhere, and that to only the same instance, single and same instance of the WebDriver. And that is why I am right now here using singleton. So you remember we talked about dependency injection, and we are talking about that driver instance has to be, I need to make it available across all my step definitions and all of methods. So inversion of control or dependency injection is another way of doing it, right? So driver, the same instance is what I wanted to pass in my different classes and methods. So dependency injection, which I actually used here earlier, test context, I am injecting it and I am You see this, I'm putting my driver inside test context UI object, which is available across all my classes. And that is how I'm sharing the state of driver, right? So this was one of the way of doing this, right? What I'm talking about right now is another way of doing the similar thing. So no matter where I'm going to call this method, I'm going to get the same instance. So let's say if I use this here, so instead of, for example, let me take an example. So for example here, right? Let me uncomment this first. So here you see I have to pass this driver from here and there. You see this? So I have initializing it here and I have to pass it from here and there. If I use this method, so the way to do use singleton is this. Let me cut this, paste it here. Right, so I'll write WebDriver Manager singleton get instance of WebDriver Manager, right? This is how I'm getting the instance of it. So once I get the instance, then on that instance, I'm calling the get driver. And there also it is checking whether driver is null. If it is null, it will create the new Chrome driver. If it is not null, that is driver is existing, then it will return, it will not go inside this and it will return the same driver. All right, so this is how I am accessing the driver. So one method was this, which we talked about at the top earlier, using WebDriver Manager simple. Now I am talking about the singleton one. So how do you will invoke using singleton? WebDriver Manager singleton get instance of WebDriver Manager and then get driver, and this will give you the driver here. And here you can of course write Chrome and all. Right now it is not written in that way, but you can simply write here what kind of driver you wish to have, a new Chrome driver or a new Firefox driver. That also can be done here. But yeah, this is how basically you're going to create the driver. Now, if you want to get a driver somewhere else, right? So for example, you don't want to pass it here. Right now, you see I'm passing it here. Why I have to pass it here? Because I'm creating the driver here and I need to make it available somewhere else, right? So I'm actually putting this inside text context UI so that it becomes available somewhere else. But if I want to avoid this passing of driver, this, this volleyball, like you pass on ball from one court to another, right? One person to another. Instead of doing that, if you want to make it available universally, then you can simply call this line anywhere and it will still return you the same instance of the driver. That's the beauty of using singleton. So let's say here I have a driver and I will just write it something like this here, and that is it. So I don't have to set the driver and all those things. I don't have to do. I can directly access it here, and I can actually keep it anywhere wherever I need a driver, and it will return me the same instance. Okay. I hope you understood. Am I making sense, guys? Or you guys are completely lost? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys, stop me in between if you're not getting it. I know these concepts, if you're new to Java and object-oriented programming, which I think everyone is, because otherwise you won't be in this call. These concepts could be a little bit tricky to understand in the beginning, but these are necessary. If you don't understand them, it will become difficult for you to sustain in the real-time project. Okay, so it's because real-time projects are developed by people who are experienced and they uses these kind of concepts there, and you will not be able to understand or modify the framework if you're not familiar with these concepts. So this time in the framework development activity, I'm introducing all these concepts because I am getting this feedback from many of my old students that they are not getting what it is and how it's working, and also that is the reason I'm doing this. And I want everyone to understand this, practice this, and ask questions, because without asking questions we cannot you will not be able to understand it. Questions are the real thing actually. So please ask if you're not getting it. Anyway, so this is how a singleton works. Right now, the third thing is the factory design pattern. So let me comment this out. We don't need this, and let me now come to the factory design pattern. Now, factory design pattern is relatively, I would say, a little bit more complex to implement compared to singleton, because singleton you have single class, that is it, right? But in factory you have to create multiple classes, and to explain that I would have to explain something on my whiteboard and take this example. So let me give you an example. Anyone can see my pen and paper, sort of virtual pen and paper here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I got a yes. Okay, so take an example of a pen. Okay, so if you want to create a blue pen and you want to create a pink pen and you want to create a red pen. So what you will do, you'll create a blue pen, pink pen, and red pen classes, and then you will implement its functionalities. Okay. So instead of, let me draw some diagram here. So I will draw a diagram. So let's say this is your pen classes. So this is your, let's say, blue pen. This becomes your pink pen. This becomes your red pen, right? These are your classes: blue pen, pink pen, and red pen. Now, essentially, all these are what? These are pen, right? So what I can do is, instead of creating these classes separately, what I can do is I can create another, I should say, abstract class or an interface. So I can write here pen, okay? And this could be an abstract class or interface. Okay, this could be abstract class or interface. And I could extend this class or implement this class in all of these, right? Now, if I want to create these objects, blue pen, pink pen, red pen objects, what I can do is I can create another class and I will mark it as factory class. Okay. Now the factory class job would be to create the object of these pens based on its interface. I'm going to tell you the implementation of it as well, but I'm just trying to present the overall picture of what I'm going to do next. And by this example, I also will kind of then relate it to how I have implemented the WebDriver factory pattern. And then wherever you use it, so after this, once you implemented this whole design, now this becomes, let's say, your main program or your test or your test cases or step definitions, for example. Now, if you want to access these pens here, you're going to call the factory. All right. So what we are doing here, we are trying to do two things. One is abstraction. Second is we are also doing encapsulation, which we are already doing earlier. So we are kind of hiding how we are going to get object of blue pen, pink pen, and red pen. We are hiding the complete logic and we are using the factory. So factory is kind of encapsulating everything here. Factory is kind of encapsulating all of this logic of creation of the object, right? And it's abstracting it as well. Secondly, it is also introducing a concept called as polymorphism, right? So we're going to create the variable name with its parent using this, and we are going to assign it the child. So best example to understand this is WebDriver driver equal to Chrome driver. We don't initialize at Chrome driver equal to new Chrome driver. We say WebDriver driver equal to new Chrome driver. Now this is in itself is an example of a polymorphism concept. So similar kind of thing we are going to do it here. Let me save it and let me go back to the desktop version of it. Okay, so I actually implemented this. I actually implemented this example here. Pen example. Yeah. So see, I wanted to have a blue pen. I wanted to have a pink pen. I wanted to have a red pen. So I first created a blue pen, and there I have a method called as draw line. Then I created a pink pen, and there also I have a method as draw line. And then I have a red pen. There also I have a method as draw line. But so these three classes I have created, and then I created a pen manager, right? Now pen manager is an abstract class, and where it has the method which is common to these classes, right? Now this is a thinking in object-oriented language, right? So if you want to create multiple classes and those classes have common behavior, so it's always better to first create the abstract class, abstract behavior, and then you extend it. That is what I've done here. So pen manager is what I've created. Draw line is the method, abstract method. And then if you would have noticed, then all of these classes I am extending pen manager and I'm overriding it. And based on the class in which this method is present, I am writing its implementation. If it is in draw line blue, it is going to print draw line blue. If it is in pink pen, it is going to say draw pink line. If it is in red pen, it's going to say draw red line. And then after that, when pen manager is done, I have implemented pen factory. Now this pen factory has a static method called as get instance. And this instance is returning the pen manager object. So pen manager object is being returned. This is what is being returned in the pen factory. And all I'm passing is the color here. Based on the color, it is saying if color is pink, then pink pen is what is returned in the pen manager object. So you see, this is called as polymorphism. So object is declared as the abstract class, the parent, but I am assigning a child class instance to it. Now the same thing happens with the WebDriver driver equal to new Chrome driver. So I think most of you have asked this question. So if an interview asks where you are implementing OOPS concept in your framework, so you can ask, tell these things, that we have implemented factory design pattern. In the factory design pattern, we have encapsulation, and we also have abstraction there, and we also have polymorphism there. And that's how you can explain that this is how we are implementing page object, or no, sorry, not page object, OOPS concepts in our framework. Okay, so once you have this get instance method created, then comes the runner part. So how you're going to create these objects? So initially, if you wanted to create the blue pen, what you would have done is you would have written something like this: blue pen equal to new blue pen, right? And as I said, we don't want to create our objects some like this. What we want is that we want to passing this control to somewhere at a separate place, and that class is responsible for creation of the object. So that's why we are not using these kind of things, and we are, instead of doing this, we are calling simply the factory class get instance. This will give you the pen manager instance, and on pen manager you're going to call the method draw line, actual method. So get instance, this is your get instance. This is returning you the pink pen if it is pink, then blue pen object if it is blue, and red pen object if it is red. Fair enough? If I just show you, if I just run it, you will see the same behavior. So if it's blue, it will say draw blue pen, pink pen, red pen, right? So just by passing blue, pink, and red, I'm getting these statements. Now, how this fits into our WebDriver example? In the WebDriver also, the similar thing happens. Sometimes you need Chrome driver, sometimes you need Firefox, sometimes you need Safari, sometimes you need IE, right? So the same concept is what I've implemented here in the factory pattern. I'll just quickly explain it because, by the way, guys, meeting is going to get over soon. I'm going to send a new link if it gets over abruptly, okay? So this is your Firefox manager. We have init driver here. We have driver manager where we have init driver. This is an abstract class, and Firefox manager and Chrome manager is kind of getting it from the driver manager, and it's overriding here as well. So if it is init driver inside Chrome manager, it is Chrome driver here. It is returning Chrome driver, and this is the driver manager, which is and this is a driver factory, which is giving me the driver manager instance. And if it is Chrome, then Chrome manager, otherwise Firefox manager. And the way to use it is this: driver manager, and then driver manager dot get driver manager. I'm passing the value here Chrome, and once I get the driver manager, I'm going to call these methods: get driver, it will return me a driver, maximize browser, navigate to driver. So I have kind of encapsulated the creation as well as reusable methods also I have placed inside this driver manager factory. Okay guys, the meeting is going to get over soon. I'm going to send a new link. Let's join that.